In a village far off from most civilization, a midwife was at a point of frustration. She was doing quite well, but as people could tell, she was often melancholy, for she had tried thoroughly to have her own child, and with the results she was riled. Her only other option was to go with adoption, but she wanted her own, and that fact was well known. While resting one day beside a cool lake, she thought that perhaps a child she could take. She had helped many women deliver their children, and soon she would be needed because families had pleaded and asked for her assistance, and she knew that everyone could only watch from a distance as she helped each lucky mother give birth to another. While sitting by the lake filled with water to drink, her clever mind began to think. There was one woman who was due in a week. All she had to do was not let the parents peek when the child was born, for it was the norm for babies to cry, and that would make her plan go awry. She made a list of objects she would need to make her plan succeed. She would need something to keep the baby out of sight, so she could sneak it away in the black of night. A blanket was perfect, and that object was checked off her mental list. Her plan would exist. The week it was long, and the pregnant woman was strong. The midwife was anxious. Would her plan be vanquished? Each weekday dawned bright while she stayed out of sight, and waited with fear that someone would hear of her unfortunate trick. Could she make it stick? She just wanted a child, and that wish drove her wild. She really did care, but she just couldn't bear being all alone in her empty old home. The moon it was full, and the tides they did pull. Labor did begin to the midwife's chagrin. As the baby came out, she did not make a shout. The midwife's chance was here, because no one could hear whether the baby was alive or still. She could bend truth to her will. The woman she cried that her baby had died. Tears they were shed, and condolences said. Then the midwife slipped away with her ill-gotten gain. The midwife got home with the baby as her own. She named her Ayana, and should she ever want a small toy to play with, the midwife gave it to her as a gift. The years they passed quickly, and soon Ayana was 15. Her life was always happy while she lived in that bright alley. Her days were filled with joy, and she often had a choice of how to spend her days, learning in sun or in the shade. She got an education, and she had no hesitation about learning a new idea, which she often taught to her friend Sophia. There was one thing she often noticed, but she decided not to focus on the fact the midwife was sometimes sad. The midwife, however, was also glad that no one found her out, and she could continue going about her business as usual, and no one would doubt she was truthful. But as it was bound to occur, someone had heard of the young girl who was stolen while no one had noticed. The stranger went to the birth parents, for he was of good merit, and he told them what had happened, while their moods slowly blackened. They went to the midwife and threatened her life so they could take their daughter to her real mother and father. The midwife said yes and said goodbye with a kiss, and she watched as they left, and she felt it was theft. For her baby to be taken, she knew they were mistaken. The young woman was a rascal. She could cause the family scandal. Meanwhile, Ayana arrived at her new home. She went straight to a chair, demanding to be left alone. She stayed this way for weeks, getting up only to eat. No one knew what to do, for the mother had 4 other children too. People tried talking to Ayana, but she couldn't be bothered. She said she wanted to go home or be left on her own. The family finally agreed, and she took her leave, going back to the midwife, her mother for life. Ayana became her apprentice. In her studies she was stupendous. The midwife was thrilled that her daughter was so skilled. They lived long, happy lives, and their friendship survived.